Welcome back, everyone. Pal Ponder on Weather here. Happy New Year. I am back from a couple days off from vacation. But wow, we have a lot of active weather to talk about, and it's been active. Let's start off with the last 7 day of rainfall totals. And we've been crushed out here off the west coast with relentless systems coming in, pounding the coastline. In fact, a couple days ago, the Bay Area of San Francisco reached 5.5 inches of rainfall. That obviously broke the daily record, but it was the second wettest day all time on record, and records go back all the way back into the 1800s. But even along the southern regions as well, into California and even into Phoenix, has picked up some healthier totals, and it was raining in Vegas out there, believe it or not. But it has been drier in the mid part of the country, and most of the storm development has basically been east of the Dallas-Fort Worth area into East Texas, moving into the southeast with heavier rain amounts. And we're going to be adding to these totals into the days to come because we've got more severe weather to talk about. But then there's snowier side too. So it's been prolific snowfall rates into the mountain regions of California. Portions of Donner Pass here is 7.5 inches snowfall rates per hour. That is insane. Blinding snow up in that region. They get a lot of snow, but 7.5 inches an hour is just crazy stuff. But all these areas in Intermountain Rush has been crushed in the ski countries, but now that has shifted in the midsection of the country, places in Nebraska. Valentine's already hit 13 inches of snow, and that is lifting northeast, and that's going to be impacting portions of Minnesota, getting into Wisconsin. But we've got a warm sector to talk about as well. So we've had a lot of daily records, almost tying daily records, if not breaking daily record high temperatures just yesterday and the days to come. Some of these areas are 20, 25 degrees, almost 30 degrees above average. So I appreciate all my followers out there. In fact, was able to reach 150,000 followers by the end of the year last year, and I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. If you are new to the channel and like detailed weather breakdowns, hit the subscribe button. You're in. You get all my daily content on this channel. So let's really delve into the details and take a look at the hazard map, because we're going to break this up into like 3 separate sections. First of all, this is the warm sector side of it. We've got very slow moving storms that have come out of East Texas. Now they're over Louisiana. That's why we have the flash flood watches in place all along the southern regions here into portions of Mississippi, Alabama, and even getting into Georgia. But we've got numerous flood warnings along this leading edge of this storm. And then we've got tornado watches lined up across northern portions of Louisiana, Mississippi, into Tennessee, heading into Kentucky. And there's the cold side of the storm. Well, they've already picked up 13 inches, and they're going to be adding to these totals. Now that storm is going to be shifting off into portions of Minnesota and to Wisconsin, but there's also an icy setup to this as well, getting some dangerous ice in the portions of Iowa. But then now we have a new system that's coming in off the west coast, a little bit clearer today, but they're already getting ready for tomorrow with high wind warnings, and they'll be adding to these flood watches because we've got another prolific storm going to be impacting the west coast. And for today, here's the severe weather setup. So we had all those storms yesterday into East Texas and Oklahoma, into Arkansas with some tornadoes. Unfortunately, that has shifted off into the east. Now we're still dealing with that enhanced risk and potential for strong tornadoes. So now the areas of concern are going to be the Baton Rouge area, into Montgomery, places into Mobile, into Gulfport, Mississippi. Those are the highest impacting areas today, but don't let your guard down in areas back into Nashville, all the way into New Orleans, even into Atlanta, Georgia, into Birmingham, Alabama, as well as Columbus, Georgia, and then even into places into Memphis, Tennessee, could see some stronger storms leading all the way up to Louisville, Kentucky. And the main concern with these storms are going to be the strong tornado potential are going to be impacting these areas into places like New Orleans, getting into Baton Rouge, places into Montgomery, Alabama, and to Mobile. Those areas are the highest impacted areas, could see some of those strong EF2 type tornadoes, unfortunately, into the evening time frame. And there's going to be a long threat, because I think this is going to be a 2-part system coming through today into the evening hour, and then another system as that low level jet comes through going into the overnight and even into tomorrow morning. So this is a long duration setup in this area, extending all the way up into portions of Tennessee and Kentucky with that tornadic storm. So on the big picture, you can actually see in the satellite view, got a lot of lightning with this setup. That's why the systems is really slowed down, dealing with that warm sector. Plenty of soupy air mass. The dew points are just crazy high for this time of year. And then all the thunder snow we could be impacting these areas with along the cold sector. There's the drier setup for California today, but they're just getting ready for the deluge that's going to be impacting that area tomorrow with another prolific rain event for that area. And the ground is saturated, guys, so flooding is going to be a high concern in these areas as going forward. So let's look at the setup and really break this thing down for you, because as we move into the 3 o'clock time frame, you saw where the storms are this morning. They're really going to be getting cranking into the heat of the afternoon down here into New Orleans, getting into Mississippi, into Alabama, going to be sneaking into Georgia by then. This is a 3 o'clock time frame, heading into central Tennessee, central Kentucky, and then lighter showers extending all the way up into Pennsylvania and portions of the Northeast, where we got the cold sector as well, back into Nebraska with heavier snow still cranking for them, back into South Dakota, getting into Minnesota by then with those darker blues, those heavier snows, and to northern portions of Wisconsin. And so as we move into the 10 o'clock time frame tonight, that first storm system is going to be shifted off into portions of Atlanta. Should see some stronger storms by then, shifting into South Carolina. You can almost see it's trying to clear out, but we also get that low-level jet. It's going to be having renewed force, renewed lifting. We're going to be seeing stronger storms start to break out again into Mississippi, heading into Alabama, and that's just going to be extending into the overnight hours as the snow continues to fly to the north. So as we move into the overnight hours and as we go into your rush hour morning for tomorrow morning, going into Wednesday, that second line of storms is going to be impacting a good part of the deep south into the overnight hours. And so by the time you wake up for your morning commute, Birmingham, Alabama should be hitting hard by then, into Atlanta again with those stronger storms and tornadic storms. So don't let your guard down. Man, we've got a long duration event, so definitely be on high alert, not just for today, into the overnight and going into tomorrow morning as well, as this is a two-pronged system that's going to be impacting these areas that'll extend into portions of eastern Tennessee by then, getting into eastern Kentucky. And the snow continues to fly in portions of Minnesota and Wisconsin, with the icier setup to the north as well, as we're starting to see the initial impact from that other storm system that's going to be coming in off the west coast. And so by the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, around noon time frame, wow, they just get crushed in Northern California tomorrow with very heavy rain. And then the mountain regions again, with adding to those feet of snowfall totals. Those have been some impressive snows in the mountain ranges, feet, if not double digits in feet of snow that's going to be impacting those areas, as that system into the southeast will be still impacting portions of Atlanta still again by then, even into the noontime hour with these slower moving storms. Now these are shifted off into portions of South Carolina, getting into North Carolina, will eventually sneak into Virginia by then, going into portions of Delaware, extending up into the Northeast and portions of the Mid-Atlantic, with some lighter moderate rains into portions of Ohio here. But look at the snow continuing to fly in these same regions. So you're going to be getting some healthy totals and the snow bucket for them. But let's break this thing down for you, because this is the concern even into the deep south with those slower moving storms. That's why they've got those flash flood warnings in place. Look at these convective bandings, and this is the latest high resolution guidance. This is just over the next 48 hours, guys. We're talking heavier rains, a good 4 to 6 inches in some of these areas, and they can't even be rolled out of some 6 to 8 inch totals, and where these convective bandings really start to light up. So that's why, on top of the severe weather, Flooding is a huge concern down here into the warm sector, good part of the southeast, even in extending into portions of Georgia, going into Tennessee, and even into portions of North Carolina. There could be picking up some very heavy rain, if not flooding rains at times. So you can definitely see with wherever these convective banding set up, that's where the flooding is going to be a huge concern. But then out west, where that second system really comes in for tomorrow, wow, look at some of these totals as they come in, adding to those saturated soils up there in California, especially Northern California. I don't think they can handle another 4 to 6 inches of rain just in a day over a 24-hour time span. So definitely flooding is going to be a huge concern heading into tomorrow up there in that region. And the wind is going to be prolific as well. So here's the system that's two-pronged approach coming in for the southeast with those very high winds, and then to the northern side too with that blowing and drifting snow. This is some mountain regions, heavier high impact winds, but look at all the higher winds coming in off the west coast. Luckily, these 100-mile-per-hour winds are going to be just offshore, but even inland, you could be picking up 60, 70-mile-per-hour wind gusts. Is definitely not out of the question. So it's just going to be a nasty day heading into tomorrow in a good chunk of central and northern California. So that just continues going into your Thursday time frame. So this is the Pacific front that will continue to shift off into the east. So now it shifts the storm threat into portions of Florida here, and especially along the east coast. Lighter amounts as you extend up into Jersey, getting into New York, but then it could transfer over to some icy mix up here into Vermont and New Hampshire and the southern portions of Maine here, and then heavier snow shifting into central and northern Maine, while the snows continue to fly for the upper peninsula, and then rain just gets crushed, and now it shifts a little bit further south into central and southern California. So this is just a system, and then yet we have more systems coming in beyond that. So as we go into Friday, that cold front will be well out in the Atlantic, so that tends to clear the atmosphere, but there's not much really cold air to speak of. Look at the freezing line. That's your red line shifting well to the north. So this is more likely what's called a zonal flow, which is just basically Pacific flow, and it's almost like an El Nino type setup, because if we look at the big picture, look at the atmospheric river that extends about 6,000 miles. So there is just no end in sight to this thing, and this goes into Saturday. So we got all the heavier rains for the next couple of days, and this is the makeup by the time we get into Saturday with yet another storm system, a 982 millibar low pressure starting to enter portions of the west coast again. While much of the south and the southeast, you can see where the jet stream is lifting well to the north. That's why your freezing line is just north of this boundary. But yet we have another system. Even after this one makes impact, we've got another one waiting into the wings. So we got plenty of rain on the table for the west coast and the Intermountain West, really into the next 7 to 10 days. And on the bigger picture, like, where's all the Arctic air? Well, it's up there in the Arctic, right? I mean, the Arctic right now is supposed to be cold. This is January the 8th time frame, so it's up. But even when you get anomalies of 30 to 35 below, average, even in the Arctic, that's really cold stuff, guys. So eventually, this is going to be displaced from the Arctic regions, but you can see plenty of the warmer air continues to build up into Alaska, into northern portions of Canada here and to the north. So there's plenty of warm air to talk about, but I think eventually this colder air will get displaced, and this is what we talked about in my polar vortex when it returns. But again, it won't even actually return until at least the second half of January, and really more likely January 20th time frame, because if we look at by the time we get into the January the 9th time frame, you can actually see the positives. When the positives start lifting, creeping a little bit further north, right? That's able to come these troughs. We know we've got significant troughs are going to be coming in off the west coast, and I think this, by the time we get into the 9th time frame, which will be early next week, we should see this storm system diving all the way down into Texas, and this could potentially impact portions of the southeast and potentially lift further off into the northeast as well. And so even though you're above average as far as temperatures, it's not out of the question we could be looking at a potential snowstorm by the time we get into, say, the 11th 12th time frame, even in the northeast, as these positives continue to lift a little bit further north, and that's able to sneak the trough underneath. And I think it's what comes after that. I think eventually this dam will start to break and some of that colder air will eventually get entrenched into the lower 48. But then we're still a long ways off. We're still beyond 2 weeks. And I think it's going to be at least in the second half, if not January 20th time frame. But before we talk about any Arctic air to speak of. But look at the snow. So here's the snow on the broader picture with those warmer temperatures. Even in Alaska, there's not much snow. Even in Canada, there's really not much snow. All the snow is with these El Nino type systems that's coming in off the west coast with prolific snow rates up here into the mountain regions of California. Heavier snows for the ski country, and there's the snows are going to be impacting the midsection of the country through South Dakota, through portions of Minnesota, and to Wisconsin. We could have a little system that comes through, sneaks into the Ohio Valley this weekend, dropping a couple inches of snow for that region. But then there's the rain. So we got these systems, these two-pronged systems that's coming in off the deep south here with those heavier rain amounts, a little bit lighter amounts as you extend up into the northeast, a little bit heavier amounts as you go into the portions of the mid-Atlantic, getting in portions of Massachusetts, into Connecticut, into Vermont and New Hampshire. Most of this is going to be and a little bit snowier amounts as we extend further north. But then there's all the rain that's going to be impacting the west coast. So we have the systems coming in for the next couple of days, but then we have more systems this week. So very heavy rainfall totals for the west coast. So hey, I appreciate you guys watching. Do follow me on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I'm very active on those platforms as well. And catch me in the next update where I protect you for and after the storm.